if we ever, okay, thank you. All right, thank you for that introduction. A little lengthy, but much appreciated. Thank you. It's really great to be here with everyone today. And Brett and I are married, but we're in different rooms so that I don't get tripped up in his wires and so on. I'm going to say a few words, and so will Brett, and then he'll share some of his songs, as Vita was explaining. So to get underway, I'm really excited to introduce Abdu'l-Bahá to you, if this is an introduction, and if it's not, if you're like me, you just love hearing about him anyway, over and over again. Um, so he was born in May 1844, and his given name was Abbas Effendi. So we refer to him as Abdu'l-Bahá. This is actually a title that he took a little later in life, which means the servant of Baha, Abdu'l-Bahá. So the servant of Baha, and Baha translates to glory, but it's actually referring to his father, Baha'u'llah, who you know was the founder of the Baha'i Faith. So that right there says a lot about Abdu'l-Bahá, who he was as a person, and his life, which was serving not only his father Baha'u'llah, but the Baha'is as well, the Baha'i world. This is a really special year because I mentioned he was born in 1844. He died in November 1921, which makes this the 100th anniversary. And so this is really quite an honor for Brett and I to have this space with you for the next hour or so to talk about Abdu'l-Bahá, and this on his 100th anniversary of his passing. So we're all blessed. It's just wonderful. I'm going to turn it over to Brett, who, like Vita basically said a lot of history, but Brett, you'll probably say a few words and then introduce a song for us.
Thanks, Mo. Yeah, great to be here and see wonderful faces. And when Maureen and I were preparing this, we're always feeling a little stressed out because there's so much to say about Abdu'l-Bahá, and we want to make sure that we can convey as much to you in the space of an hour that does this topic justice. And I was thinking to myself, because this is the centenary of the passing of Abdu'l-Bahá, there's a lot of arts that are being produced globally in honor of the life of Abdu'l-Bahá. There are two film. There's a film being made, and it will be released towards the end of this month that specifically focuses on the life of Abdu'l-Bahá. And I was thinking, what is it about Abdu'l-Bahá that for Baha'is is so special? Because there are so many things. And so we'll try to convey a few of those. But the one that comes to mind, and this was actually reminded to me 2 nights ago when my father was talking with some of our youth. We have a youth group, and some of you may have heard my father speak before. He's a really amazing speaker. And he said something that for me encapsulated one of the main reasons that we celebrate Abdu'l-Bahá. And it's the fact that on May 23rd, 1844, two amazing things happened for the Baha'i Faith. One is that was the night that the Bab, who is the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, declared to a man named Mullah Hussein that he was the promised one and that he had come to prepare the way for Baha'u'llah. So this was happening in a house in Shiraz. And at the same time, at midnight that evening, Abdu'l-Bahá was born. And for Baha'is, this is not a coincidental event. This is really quite a phenomenal event because Abdu'l-Bahá became the vessel through which the teachings of the Bab and Baha'u'llah could be expressed perfectly on this earthly plane. And so that is just in and of itself, it is a massive statement, and it's a huge concept, and we're constantly exploring what does that mean and what does that look like. So Abdu'l-Bahá for us is this mysterious figure who was neither a prophet, but he was much more than an ordinary man at the same time. And he was able to take the teachings of Baha'u'llah and the Bab and expand on them and elaborate on them. And as Vida said, bring those teachings to all levels of society in a way that was very, very accessible. And he also was the incarnation of the virtues expressed in the writings of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So this first song that I'm going to share, some of you know, it's called Reflection of Him, and it is about this exact moment that the Bab declared who he was to Mullah Hussein, 1844, May 23rd. And it is called Reflection of Him. In every age and time, the Holy One appears, bringing love and peace. The messenger of light and life. From all that is revealed, creation is renewed to bring new life to all. Unfolding the divine plan for us. And all he would strive to know is him. Long to become a reflection of him, of him. A traveler to Shiraz, searching for the promised one, fulfilling all his hopes. His journey finally comes to an end. He sat before his feet, enchanted by the words, revealing streams of light. Morning sun dissolves the dark of night. And all he would strive to know is him. Long to become a reflection of him. Long to become a reflection of him, of him. Of him. Over to you, Mo.
I'll pick up here. Thank you. So, friends, today I was inspired because I tuned into the Remembrance Day ceremonies. I'm not sure if the rest of you did, but an idea came to my mind, and that doesn't happen often, so I went with it. And I really focused my comments this evening around the importance of Remembrance Day, but also what it represents, the concept of world peace. So I'm really going to focus in on that. And like Brett said, this is just so broad. The Baha'i writings cover just such a wide array of topics, but global peace is at the center of Baha'i teachings. So I'm really going to zone in on that. We've done this talk in this forum before, and we talked more about some stories from Abdu'l-Bahá's life. So I guess this is like chapter 2. I'll start by saying that Abdu'l-Bahá is totally a unique figure in history. There has not been another personage such as Abdu'l-Bahá in religious history, period. So understanding Abdu'l-Bahá's role is really essential to understanding the Baha'i Faith itself and Baha'u'llah's teachings. Baha'u'llah's writings talk about this idea of progressive revelation of religion, in which individual religions arise to meet the needs of their times. So when Brett was referring to Abdu'l-Bahá as the perfect example of his father's teachings, then in this context, we understand that Abdu'l-Bahá was the perfect example for how to live in these times. Isn't that interesting? Like, of course, Baha'u'llah's teachings elucidated these timeless truths, but it was also said in the context of an ever-changing and evolving world. And Abdu'l-Bahá is the figure that we turn to see what Baha'u'llah's writings look like in practice. So the establishment of universal global peace is one of the most critical issues of our day, and it would contribute to the alleviation of our human condition. So Abdu'l-Bahá, by his very words, by his example, the life he led, gives us a glimpse into how to establish a lasting and universal peace in these times. He helped us understand how to, well, understand peace, how to practice it and pursue it. So where I want to focus in on is that Abdu'l-Bahá really talked about the relationship between thought and action. So he said, it's not enough to know about, for example, the horrors of war. That will not establish peace. So I should mention that Abdu'l-Bahá here, the bulk of his traveling and teaching was in the early 1900s. So we all know what happened in 1914. So after the Great War, the First World War, Abdu'l-Bahá said that the horrors of that war are not going to be the conditions for peace. What are they? He said, peace is impossible through just ordinary human feelings and thoughts. So think about it. All of us who are just well-wishers and we just, hope for peace, and, we have a feeling of horror about potentially ever having a war again. That's not enough to prevent war. He said that we must rely on the forces of power, of religion. So the word of God has an influence, and that our feelings and thoughts have to transform into action. So in other words, to summarize, peace will be possible if it is based on spiritual thoughts, based on spiritual values expressed through human deeds. And I want to elaborate on that a little more, but I'm going to take a break and flip it over to our musician.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to the piece that I was going to play, because he really did focus on the spiritual side of life. In fact, when he came to New York in 1911, he was very impressed with the city. And I think it was one of the journalists asked him, what do you think about New York? And I'm going to paraphrase, but it was essentially that New York and the Americans had mastered material progress, but what was lacking was spiritual progress. And one of Abdu'l-Bahá's main teachings was this notion that we are spiritual beings, and only when we live in the spirit are we truly happy. And so much of his teaching and his deliberations were around this concept of the spirit. In 1792, God was publicly dethroned from the church. There was this movement of humanism and reason and rational thinking. And when you look at religious history, you can understand why that happened. And so what's been going on for the last 250 years is this celebration of reason and science. But the pendulum has swung so far to the other side. It's been at the expense of listening to the heart and understanding the soul and the spirit, and the nature of man, which Baha'is believe is really our soul. There's a really neat quote I'd like to share from you. Abdu'l-Bahá said, "The soul can discover the realities of things, comprehend the peculiarities of beings, and penetrate the mysteries of existence. All sciences, knowledge, arts, wonders, institutions, discoveries, and enterprises come from the exercised intelligence of the rational soul." And so it's this amazing concept that Abdu'l-Bahá is trying to bring us back to the notion that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And not until we integrate and we allow the spirit to flow into the institutions that we're creating, into the decisions we're making, not until we allow the spirit to be part of the advancement of civilization will we really succeed. So I wanted to share that, and the song I'm going to play is called The Gift of the Ether. And Baha'u'llah said that Abdu'l-Bahá had the gift of the ether. And what that meant was he had this ability to visit people in their dreams, to communicate with others in different places. It's something that we wouldn't understand, but he had this very spiritual mystery about him. And there are many stories of people said that he visited them in their dreams or they saw him and so on. So this is really just a song that lets us remember that we are spiritual beings. It's called Gift of the Ether. O bird that lifts thy weary head, awakened by the dawn, discover thy wings and lift in flight and soar in the realms beyond, and leave the dust behind. What is this light in the mirror of hearts that shines so bright, so deep within? This is the force calling you home, a strength, a power you cannot see, the visible waves, the mingling of souls, the gift of the ether. His mystic breath enchants thy dreams, sweet scent will intoxicate. The still reflects a call to know, the spark that spreads the servant's glow ignites the lamp within. What is this light in the mirror of hearts that shines so bright, so deep within? This is the force calling you home, a strength, a power you cannot see, invisible waves, the mingling of souls. Oh, this is the force calling you home. with a power you cannot see. Invisible waves, the mingling of souls, the gifts of the ether.
Thank you, Brett. Sometimes we hear, feedback from that song, that a line that really resonated with people was this idea of coming home or going home. And Vida read something I forgot I had written some time ago in my bio about reading the Baha'i writings and feeling as though, while there was a lot of newness to that, perhaps in the way of names and places and so on, but there was a feeling of home. I already knew this voice. So I really like that part of Brett's song that he just sung. And maybe some of you can relate to that. If Baha'i teachings are new to you, I would recommend that the aspects that maybe seem new, they're exciting. It's the parts that feel like home that is sort of calling to us. So back to Abdu'l-Bahá, I wanted to talk a bit about his journey. So we were mentioning that he was in prison and in exile for 40 years, and then finally he was released. And as soon as he could, he came and visited North America. There was very few Baha'is at the time. This was 1911, and they begged him to come. And he said, "I'll come on one condition: if you're united." And I'm not sure if they ever were, but he did come. So 1911 is right before the Great War, right before World War One. Abdu'l-Bahá met, like Vida was saying, in all sorts of places. He gave talks to upwards of 4,000 people, and at other times just more intimate talks. He was really speaking about the spiritual prerequisites for peace. So these prerequisites would remove the barriers to peace. What are those prerequisites? He talked about racial prejudice. Remember, this is 1911. He talked about other prejudices as well: race and class, or racial prejudice, class, nationality. He talked about prejudice towards women, sexism. He talked about economic inequalities, sectarianism, and nationalism. So really, knowing what we know now and looking back with the gift of hindsight, if people had heeded to his counsel back in 1911, I'm sure we could all agree that so many of the problems of today could have been avoided or alleviated, and so on. I had to look up sectarianism. I wasn't quite sure what that was, but sectarianism is when one has almost like a blind allegiance to a group. It could be a faith group, or it could be any other body of knowledge. It could be a political group. And so we certainly see sectarianism acting out in ways that are very divisive today. These teachings of his were not just sort of a fluffy utopian set of ideals. These are actually spiritual commands of the highest order to all the peoples of the world. And what I mentioned before about Baha'u'llah's teaching, that there's this concept of humanity changes through the ages. These are the prerequisites for peace that are relevant to us in today's day and age. And unless and until we align with these prerequisites, we won't actually enjoy a lasting universal peace. So racial prejudice, sexism, economic inequality, sectarianism, nationalism, there's still problems now, and even more so than 1911. I saw a photo of Abdu'l-Bahá in Germany in 1913 with like crowds of people around him. We know what lay ahead for Germany and for Europe after that visit. And we know what Abdu'l-Bahá would have been talking about. So that's why I think, we have the gift of hindsight to see what could have been avoided had people really heeded to his call. But I think we also have the gift of foresight because we have a lot ahead of us that we don't know. But Abdu'l-Bahā's elucidation on his father's teachings are still relevant. They're even more relevant and more urgent today than in the past. So in 1917 and 1916, Abdu'l-Bahá started a series of letters. It was a strategy aimed at spreading out the foundations of peace throughout the world. For those of you who are familiar with this, it's called the Tablets of the Divine Plan, and they were directed towards those living in North America, the Baha'is, for two reasons. One, he had just spent considerable time training them and talking to them about these principles, but also there's a lot more freedom in North America than there were in other parts of the world, and especially for women, because women, some of the early Baha'is and followers of Abdu'l-Bahá, they were women. The women were really at the forefront. So he talked about going out across the globe and using the Baha'i Faith as a vehicle for establishing global peace. And so this plan would comprise all the diverse populations of the human family, and they would contribute to the spiritualization of the planet over time. I'll come back to some more and I'll turn it over to Brett.
I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if this works. That good? Okay. I just wanted to, there's just a couple of slides, I think, as we're talking about this. It's nice to have some images. So I think Vida mentioned he came to the West, and that was one of his big legacies, was uniting the East and the West. And when he came, there was really a flurry of activity about this person coming, and there was newspapers from New York to LA talking about him coming, and so there's a picture of him, and there's one of the headings. And when he arrived in New York, one of the first things he wanted to do was to visit the poor. And as Maureen said, this was one of his main themes. His father, Baha'u'llah, was known as the father of the poor, and his mother, was the mother of consolation. And Baha'u'llah and his wife Nawab served the poor incessantly, and Abdu'l-Bahá definitely picked up on that and became an avid lover of the poor and supporter of the poor. So within the first few days of visiting North America, he said, "I'd like to go and visit the poor." So they took him down to the Bowery Mission in New York, which is like 11th, can't remember. I was there, but it was the poor area of New York, downtown, and he went with a woman by the name of Juliet Thompson, who was a painter, and who actually painted him. Actually, wait a minute. I think I might have that slide. This is, okay, there's Juliet Thompson is in the middle there, and that's her painting of Abdu'l-Bahá. And that's another story that's pretty amazing. And the woman on the left there is Lua Getzinger, who some of you will know. But I digress. So coming back, he went to the Bowery Mission, and there is a picture of what it would look like of the poor lining up. And he said to Juliet, "I am in love with the poor." And then this is part of his talk. He said, "Tonight I am very happy for I have come here to meet my friends. I consider you my relatives, my companions, and I am your comrade. And he talked to them for a while, and then this is what Juliet recorded. She says, as the men filed toward him, he held out his hand to the first, grasped the man's hand and left something in it, perhaps 5 or 6 quarters. For John told me afterward that the completely destitute ones received the most. The man glanced up surprised. His eyes met Abdu'l-Bahá's look, which seemed to be plunging deep into his heart with fathomless understanding. He, this poor derelict, must have known very little of even human love or understanding. And now, too suddenly, he stood face to face with the divine love. He looked startled, incredulous, as though he couldn't believe what he saw. Then his eyes strained towards the master, something new burning in them, and Abdu'l-Bahá's answered with a great flash, revealing a more mysterious, a profounder love. A drowning man rescued or taken up to heaven. I saw this repeated scores of times. And so he met with 400 people and he gave them all money. And I looked up the exchange and, with the passage of time, and it was the equivalent of about $40 for each person. So that I just wanted to share that story. This is what was the essence of Abdu'l-Bahá, was serving the poor. And so on that note, I will leave you with that quote while I sing a song. And he called the poor the trust among us. They are God's trust among us, and that we are to take care of them. A fearless servant of the poor, this prisoner freer than us all, good ground made ready by the rain, and it pours down on him. He gave all he had away. Easing of hunger and pain, he is everywhere. The world will never be the same, for his love remains with us. Abdu'l-Bahá. He heard the crying of his trust, the midnight sighing of the poor, though weighted down and bound in chain. He clothed them in his love, and he gave all he had away. Easing of hunger and pain. Oh, he is everywhere. Never be the same, for his love remains with us. Abdu'l-Bahá.
No, the stories of Abdu'l-Bahá are really wonderful. And there's a program for the spiritual education of children, and they really use a lot of the stories of Abdu'l-Bahá's life because they teach us such profound lessons on how to live. It's great. So many children now are being raised with this in their DNA. Um, I just thought of something. If Brett, you want to put my text number, maybe even Vita, because you're less encumbered there, in the chat. I have these little beautiful booklets that are stories of Abdu'l-Bahá, and if anyone would like a set, I'll mail it to you. So Vita, you probably have my text number. You can put it in there, and so someone can text me after if they'd like to have a copy of these beautiful stories. But for me, I want to carry on with this concept of peace. um, when Abdu'l-Bahá was visiting in the West, he was talking about how what we see in the world is a manifestation of social and spiritual illnesses, and that these are contributing to the conditions of war. That makes sense to me. And, I really feel as though we're living in turbulent times. I think they're more turbulent than they used to be. A lot of chaos. And it does make sense that this is a reflection of our inner selves manifested in the world. So Abdu'l-Bahá talked about the power of spiritual forces that can transform hatred and division and war and destruction into the powerful forces of love and unity and dignity and the nobility of every human being. Um, so remember I said earlier that it's like, our feelings aren't enough. Our knowledge about the horrors of war is not enough. That there has to be a conjoining of that knowledge with the power of religion and translate that into action. So this is where we understand that the power from religion will lend itself to the cohesion of society, and these forces will be released in those ways that I was mentioning about love and light and so on. I'm also going to read a quick quotation from Abdu'l-Bahá. He said, "Extinguish this fire so that these dense clouds which obscure the horizon may be scattered. The sun of reality shine forth with the rays of conciliation. This intense gloom be dispelled, and the resplendent light of peace shed its radiance upon all countries." Now, of course, the first step in this is by planting peace in our own hearts. That's our first step. But he also discussed more principles on which universal peace must rest. He talked about, well, these are Baha'u'llah's teachings, talking about the independent investigation of reality, like knowing through our own eyes and through our own ears, investigating truth for ourselves, not just repeating tradition for the sake of tradition. The oneness of the world of humanity. This goes hand in hand with the teaching of the oneness of God and the oneness of religion. The equality of men and women, that religion is actually a cause for love and fellowship. It should never be a cause for division. That religion is actually in conformity with science and reason, that they're not in conflict. Reality is one, and so science and reason coexist. Another principle is that prejudice of all forms destroys the very foundation of humanity. And a final one that I'll mention, Brett was saying earlier, Abdu'l-Bahá praised material civilization as a means to help alleviate the conditions for humanity, but he said they must be combined with divine civilization, or else the happiness, the felicity of mankind will never be attained. So I wanted to mention that because there are very many groups who have wonderful, very practical solutions to the problems of the world, but unless and until they're combined with, these divine principles, we won't get to that place of lasting global and universal peace. Brett, I think you just were going to sing one more song. Is that right? Okay, so maybe I'll just say one more thing, and that is that at the heart of everything, the Baha'i Faith is a spiritual enterprise, and it's global. Through Abdu'l-Bahá's example, in that he loved everyone, he embraced everyone, no matter what walk of life, he embraced all. It shows that in this day and age, in this time, all people of the world, and not just the leaders, like in previous, epochs, everything rested on the shoulders of leaders. He showed us by his example that all human beings are not only responsible, but we're capable of working towards the advancement of civilization, both materially and spiritually. And it's a long process towards this global transformation and maturity of the human race, but it's going to come from the grassroots of society. It's very hard to stop the growth of a human being, and it's also very hard to stop the growth of the maturation of the human family. Go ahead, Brett.
So after 239 days in North America, mostly the United States, but Abdu'l-Bahá did have some time in Canada. And there's an amazing website. Vida, would you mind putting the website at 239days.com? An amazing website that basically catalogs every day of what he did, who he met with, beautiful pictures from that time period, and so on. And so he traveled all through the United States, a little bit in Canada, and gave talks, as we said. And then his last address, I wanted to read it. It's quite short. As he was getting on the boat to sail away, it was a very sad day for many people. Of course, they wanted him to stay, and there was just so much love. And so he left. These are his last words, and then I'll play a song. He said, "This is my last interview with you, and now I am on the ship to sail away. This is my last exhortation, which I am going to give unto you. My last exhortation is this. This earth is one sphere, one nativity, one home, and all mankind are the descendants of one Father. All are created by God, and God is compassionate unto all. Therefore, if one offends another, he offends God. God wishes that all the hearts be rejoiced, that all mankind be in the utmost happiness, that every individual member of human society shall live in the utmost felicity and joy. But that which prevents mankind from being happy together is racial prejudice, sectional and sectarian prejudice, the struggle for existence, and unkindness towards one another. As to you who are present here, your eyes have been illumined, your ears have been made hearing, your hearts are knowing. You must be free from every kind of prejudice and fanaticism. You must see no difference among the religions. You must look to God, for God is the real shepherd, and all men are his sheep. The shepherd is one, and he is affectionate towards all the sheep." There were lots of women in particular that stood out at this time period in the end of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century. Her name was Mae Boles, and she met Abdu'l-Bahá in February 1899 when she made a pilgrimage to Palestine. And she said this, "Of that first meeting I can remember neither joy nor pain nor anything that I can name. I had been carried suddenly to too great a height. My soul had come in contact with the divine spirit, and this force so pure, so holy, so mighty had overwhelmed me." And the last quote, Abdu'l-Bahá says, the home of religion is the heart. The intellect is good, but until it has become the servant of the heart, it is of little avail. And you'll find when you read the stories of the history of the Baha'i Faith, how much the heart is at the center of it. So this is a story in honor of Mae Maxwell and her love for Abdu'l-Bahá. I'll cross land and sea to follow thee. Take me on a journey of love. Lead my steps aright by your light and your life. Fill me with the fire of love. And how you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see. And I will follow thee in discomfort or in ease. I'll cross land and sea. I have heard your call and set out from my home. Restless and ablaze, I will go. When my time has come and my service is done, let me circle round where you lay. How you came to me.
I think the Wi-Fi froze, or was it just me?
Yeah, it's frozen.
Okay, oh, shame.
He will come back.
He'll come back, just hang in there, friends.
Seems like, all right. So that's our presentation.
That's it. Hope you enjoyed it.
I wanted to just sort of say one thing to dispel any sort of questions or anything about being a Baha'i, and speaking to anyone who may be on this call that is wondering at all about that. Being a Baha'i is really trying to align with the teachings of Baha'u'llah and just really engaging in this worldwide spiritual endeavor. It's been the ride of my life, and I sincerely just wanted to mention that in case, I did put my information in the chat there. If anyone would like to talk about that or just jump in, you should know, please, that you're most welcome to do so. And we just carry on with the work of establishing a universal peace. So we cut out before your last song. It was good. I heard it through the floor.
I don't know, Brett, did you want to continue or with that song?
It's okay. It's okay.
He's on his phone now. And
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a hand up, Hoda. Please unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Yes, how do you do? It was wonderful. Somebody had sent me this invitation, and I put it on my Facebook page called Iranian Baha'is for Racial Justice. And
Nice.
Yes, and the moment I saw the invitation, I was very attracted, and I'm very happy I could listen to actually part of your presentation. And you mentioned, honestly, I'm going to start my video. I just jumped out of the car and I just made it. So I kind of wanted to kind of just be on screen and really quickly say that the context in which Abdu'l-Bahā's journey to the United States was very unique. And Brett mentioned it earlier. It's the pinnacle of Abdu'l-Bahá's accomplishments, because here is a person who's from the age of 9, his father, Baha'u'llah, was put in prison. And then he, later on, he's exiled, very much for the only crime that Baha'u'llah had was to unleash a new revolution, a revolutionary change in the mindset of everybody, engaging people in a thought, a conversation, a mentality, a way of life that was completely different to the time in which he lived. And Abdu'l-Bahá later on comes to the United States and he says, the gift of God to this enlightened age is a knowledge of the oneness of humanity and the fundamental oneness of all religions. Wars shall cease between nations, and by the will of God, the most great peace shall come. The world will be seen as a new world, and all men shall live as brothers. So when he comes to the United States, this is 1863, is the time that Baha'u'llah makes his public declaration. But the most important thing is when Abdu'l-Bahá comes to the United States in 1912, there's 250 years of slavery. There is 90 years of Jim Crow laws. There's later on, there's 60 years of separate Bariqo, and still America right now is dealing with anti-Blackness, racism in a very high level, where Abdu'l-Bahá, all he did, he showed an example, and in life, he uplifted the people of the eye, which is a designation given to people of African descent. And it wasn't just because he wanted to be nice, or it was a way of being kind to people of African descent. No, he actually had experience with people of African descent in Iran. Haji Mubarak was a person where the Bab referred to him as his own father. He was an Ethiopian servant. And later on, Esfandiar, whom Baha'u'llah loved, and he referred to him as a king among men. He is the one who took care of all of Baha'u'llah's debts while he was sent away for 50 years to keep sharing his message all over the world. And the qualities that Abdu'l-Bahá referred to, in actually the talk that Abdu'l-Bahá gave exactly 109 years today, these are the qualities that he said, that Esfandiar was a perfect man, with radiance, sanctity, luminous with light, dignity, faithful, sincere, a point of light, luminous, pure, obedient, trustworthy. And he held Baha'u'llah's secrets, and he was selfless. These were very much at odds in 1912, at a time when he was in the United States. He spoke to Washington, D.C., to a group of early Baha'is in Washington, D.C., where people did not even want to meet. Blacks and whites were not coming together. And he spoke and he said that blacks and whites should marry, when it was against the law in 26 states of America. So I just wanted to do justice to where Abdu'l-Bahá stood on the issue of promoting the oneness of humanity. And he said, the gift of God to this enlightened age is the knowledge of the oneness of humanity. And he says that we are one race, one progeny, descendants of one Adam. And we know that scientifically, all of us, no matter what color we are, we all come from one root of humanity, from one African Eve. Science proves that 250,000 years ago, all modern humans emerged from Africa. I just want to say, we live in a country right now in the United States that is divided against itself. And we as Baha'is, we bring this message of oneness, unity, and absolute equality of all people, of all races, of all nationalities. The earth is but one country and mankind its citizens.
Wow, wonderful, Hoda. Well said. That's amazing. At the beginning, I said that some people will know some about Abdu'l-Bahá, but I knew in my heart that if there were people on the call who knew about Abdu'l-Bahá, they would love to hear and talk about him more, and you were proof of that, Hoda. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think it's good. it's good to appreciate that. I think we forget because we think about it. Well, I mean, I do anyways. I think about, well, what was so revolutionary about it? So it is really important to put it in context. So revolutionary. Absolutely. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Bita, we can't see others. Are there questions or others that wanted to discuss a certain topic?
There is no hands up. I was just in the process of asking that when it was lovely that you guys could jump back on the call. You know, we were just kind of asking if anybody else had any experiences, stories. Hoda's contribution was amazing and wonderful. Thank you. We could honestly have every night meetings and not even cover the tip of the iceberg of Abdu'l-Bahá's contributions in life. But the forum is open. Please just unmute yourself and share your thoughts and comments and questions. I don't have any other hands up, so just feel free to jump in.
I have a question.
Please.
Britt, if you get the Wi-Fi back, can you sing more?
It looks like we're back on, so Brett's going to go down to his studio.
While Brett is doing that, Hoda, where are you zooming in from? Which part of states?
I'm from Fort Lauderdale in Florida.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Lovely. Warm weather.
There's a really wonderful website, 239days.org, and it is essays that takes into account each of those days that Abdu'l-Bahá was in Canada and the United States. But also, it really puts it into context, you know, the meetings he had and what he said, but also how he treated everyone around him with so much love. And he said that when he sees people, he sees the face of his father in everyone. So his father was Baha'u'llah. So that's one way that we can love one another, is if we see our creator in each other and only see the good and not see the bad in one another. That's another way to, you know, within our hearts and in our individual lives, work towards getting rid of every form of prejudice. I think Brett's on now.
Did you guys hear any of the last song? Yeah? Okay.
The very beginning, so.
Okay. Maybe I'll just play that one and then. I'll cross land and sea to follow thee. Take me on a journey of love. Lead my steps aright by your light and your light. Fill me with the fire of love. How you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see. I will follow thee. In discomfort or in ease, I'll cross land and sea. And I have heard your call and set out from my home. Restless and ablaze I will go. When my time has come and my service is done, let me circle round where you lay. How you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see, and I will follow thee in discomfort or in ease. I'll cross land and sea. How you came to me, even only in a dream, shining light on what I could not see, and I will follow thee in discomfort or in ease. I'll cross land and sea. I could do one more if you want. This is
Vidaja, may I say something?
Please, please.
uh, before we finish about Abdu'l-Bahá, tonight is the anniversary of the abduction of Dr. Ali Murad Davudi in Tehran, Iran. About 40 years ago, he was the secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Iran. And it is claimed that he was killed, actually. I'm wondering, Brett has created the most beautiful song about the Baha'is of Iran. At the end of your performance, would it be possible for you, Brett, to add that one for Dr. Davudi, please?
yeah, I would, yes. Okay, yeah, I would love to. I'll play two songs then. This one is called Traces. And the Baha'u'llah revealed a book called The Hidden Words, and there's about 160 small nuggets of profound wisdom, and some are in Arabic and some are in Persian, and they're all about how to live and how to approach God and detachment and so on, and they're very profound. And one of them, he says, "If thou lovest me, turn away from thyself. If thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own, that thou mayest die in me and I may eternally live in thee." And I've always loved this concept of dying in a greater will so that that greater will can live in ourselves. And when I think of that, I think of like a drop going into the ocean. So there's the individual there, but it's giving itself over to a greater will. Anyway, so I wrote this song thinking about this concept. It's called Traces. And then I'll play the song called Prisoners for our dear friends in Iran. There are traces, a circle in the sand, heaven spoken through the wise one's hand on the shore of oneness. I leave myself behind and step inside. There are traces, a remedy divine, living waters. Well, he unseals the choice wine, divine healer. His finger on the pulse of all mankind. If thou lovest me, If thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own, that thou mayest die in me, and I may eternally live in thee, eternally live in thee. Unravel secrets of unity and peace under the branches of the divine low tree. Gentle breezes whispering celestial designs, and I approach the circle with its warm embrace on the shore of oneness, by the sea of grace, through rings of fire. I hold on to your hand and step inside. And if thou lovest me, turn away from thyself. And if thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own, that thou mayest die in me, and I may eternally live in thee, eternally live in thee, eternally live in thee. You know, there was when I wrote this song, I heard, I can't remember where I heard it, but there was so the Baha'is have been imprisoned. For those of you who don't know, they have been suffering severe tyrannical oppression since the inception of the Baha'i Faith, or when the Bab came in 1844, and approximately 20,000 Baha'is were massacred over the years, and it's still to this day there are Baha'is in prison and being killed for what they believe. And so it's very, very sad. And I remember when I wrote this song, there was a recording of a woman who had chanted. She was chanting in the prison cell in Iran, I believe it was in Tehran, and she was chanting a prayer for forgiveness for those that were her captors. And that just really hit home for me. It was a very moving thing to think of, being taken away from everything that you love and you have in your life and being thrown in prison, and then having this spiritual maturity to pray forgiveness for those that are treating you that way. And so I wrote the song thinking of her and thinking of all of our brothers and sisters in Iran. And so this is called Prisoners. I can hear the voices singing, chanting behind the walls, locked away in their prison cells, and they've done nothing at all. Their courage, it makes us stronger. Their quiet resolve gives us wings. In all the suffering they endure, will only the blessings bring. And we're here for you, standing in serried lines. Let our thoughts and prayers wash over you and comfort you in the cold night. The door is locked and the key is gone. Your loved ones cry out in pain. Where is the justice? Where is the law? Yet you patiently remain. Can you feel the millions of souls, your brothers and sisters in song? They cannot extinguish the light in our hearts. The fire of love's burning strong. And we're here for you, standing in serried lines. Let our thoughts and prayers wash over you and comfort you in the cold night. And you can hear the sound of chanting, escape from her cell. A prayer for forgiveness, she's wishing her captors well. The prisoners of Tehran, their freedom denied. How we long for your release, when you can take back your lives. You can take them and shroud them in darkness. You can tear them away from their lives. But you will never break down the doors to their faithful hearts and minds. You can take them and shroud them in darkness. You can tear them away from their lives. But you will never break down the doors to their faithful hearts and minds. You can take them and shroud them in darkness. You can tear them away from their lives. But you will never break down the doors to their faithful hearts and minds. Thank you.
Just